we were actually studying the topic of requirement traceability matrix, but you need to have a track of what we have been studying so far. If you remember, why I'm repeating it again and again from exams perspective, obviously, while you'll be preparing for your exams, it is important for you to understand the overall context in which we are studying individual topics. This course is, it is a very broad, it has got a very broad, scope. So we need to see and we need to be sure about what we are actually studying. Look, our course has got two parts. That is project planning. This is one part, and schedule management or time management is other part, right? So in the project planning, we started off our discussion with some fundamental concepts in the first lecture, like what portfolio management is, what program management is, what is organizational project management, strategic objectives, and all that. And after that, we actually saw that, okay, in case of while planning a project, we perform planning at various stages. The first level of planning is pre-project planning, right? And in that, we actually check the feasibility of the project, why a project is being started, various alternatives that are discussed, to start a project, what are its high-level objectives, and then based on our feasibility study and assessment of the things, we pick or we choose one of the alternatives, and we take that thing as a project. We write a business plan for that, business case for that, benefit management plan, and all that. And ultimately, this pre-project planning, it culminates in form of start of a project or initiation of a project through a formal document such as project charter or any other documents that we may use. So this actually initiate the project. So this is pre-project planning. This is a high-level planning that is done. Once that planning is over, the next phase of planning starts, and that is the detailed planning, that is the upfront planning, in which before going into execution, we prepare a detailed plan. And that detailed plan is generally termed as a project management plan, which has got various subsidiary plans in it, that is 12 plans maybe, and 3 or 4 baselines, like 3 baselines combined together. The fourth baseline is performance management baseline, and 2 other things. And what are those 2 other things? These are 2 other things that are, that are planned at the first. And one is the
Development
the
approach, project life cycle.
and life cycle, right? Who is this? Your name, please, ma'am.
Rafia.
You already got one mark? Okay, you
Sir,
already got.
yes.
Okay, okay, no, no, no. And who was the other person? I couldn't
Rafia.
hear you.
Sir,
It is me.
Rafia. Okay, Rafia, you didn't get time today, right? 1 mark today, or did you?
सर राफिया ने नहीं लिया मैंने लिया था
अभी तक नहीं दिया तो ओके, CR प्लीज राइट. अगर पहले दिया हुआ तो फिर नहीं. Okay. So, okay. So here, what do we get? We actually get three. We first define the development approach and the project life cycle, and based on that, our planning work starts, and then we start planning the scope. This is what we are studying now, and during planning the scope, the first thing is to prepare a scope management plan and a requirement management plan. Then we start perform the next task, and that is collection of the requirement. So in this we'll have, we'll get, or we'll create two major artifacts. One is called as what?
Functional and non-functional.
No,
document
no, no. uh,
requirement document
Requirement
requirement document
documentation, yes. And
and
Project
requirement
documents.
traceability matrix
yeah, so we
requirement
create.
traceability matrix
Very right, ma'am. Your name? This is CR herself.
someone name someone yes sir
Okay, okay, write your mark
someone
too.
here
So we create two documents in collect requirement process. We create two documents. One is requirement documentation, and second is requirement traceability matrix. Before that, in the plan scope management, we also create two plans. One is scope plan, scope management plan, and other is requirement management plan, right? So two things come from the first process, and other two things come from the second process of scope. Is it clear?
Sir, sir.
Right. So
Yes,
now
sir.
now we have got all the requirements in front of us, and now we need to define a scope. Obviously many people forwarded so many requirements to us, and keeping those requirements in our mind, there would be some requirements that we have already rejected. There would be some requirements that we might not have accepted 100%, but some part of it might be accepted, obviously. So based on what requirements we have accepted and based on the priorities or prioritization of those requirements, now we are ready to define our scope, because we have got everything in front of us. We have all the requirements with us. So now we will create, define our scope. And as a result, what will we get? When we define the scope, again, we will get a document or artifact, and that is called as, can someone tell me?
Scope statement.
Scope statement. Yeah. So who was the second person other than the CR?
Sir, Zubaria.
आपने भी पहले एक नंबर ले लिया, right? So, okay,
सर
I'll
दूसरा
see.
दे
अच्छा, I'll see now.
आपने अगर एक नंबर देकर हमें फाइट पे कर दिया है तो फिर अब हम पार्टिसिपेट ना करें।
नहीं ना करेंगे तो नहीं सीखेंगे, right? But I'll see. Okay. Let me give others some chance, and then we'll see, right? Again, now what at the end of the class, I'll award some more marks. Okay, just don't worry. Okay, so in case of this defining the scope process, we will get a scope statement, a detailed scope statement, which will include all the scope. When I say all the scope, it means we will have both the product scope and project scope in it, right? We'll have both project scope and the product scope in it. In this, it is important for us to define certain things. Beside, like I will cover, we'll study everything what is there in the scope statement, but we need to be aware of two very important parts, and that is what is in the scope and what is out scope, right? When we say in scope, it means inclusions, what is included and what is not included. Sometimes it become important for us to define this thing as well, to make the things clear, to make the things, but to draw a clear cut boundaries in our scope, we need to write this down, that this is not part of this project scope actually. While, like, let me give you a few examples. For example, I need to, let's say, we are working in one of the renowned housing societies, let's say, you may name any, let's say, Barrier Town or something, and we want to develop a new phase or new housing society in some area in Islamabad or Rawalpindi. And here we need to define, let's say, you and I, we are part of a project team, and we have been assigned this project, and we have gathered all the requirements. And during this requirement gathering, we come to know that, look, the acquisition of land, we need to acquire a huge land on which we will develop this, let's say, phase 12 of this housing society. And we need to first be clear about one thing: acquisition of land or acquiring the land of for this project is part of the my project scope or not. If it is not, I will write it down in the exclusion. Similarly, taking approvals, NOCs for this land is part of my scope or not, I need to write it down. Similarly, let's say taking licenses, or uh, or getting approval of various facilities like gas and electricity, do I need to work on this too or no? Or my whole focus is just the town planning and all that. So if this, arranging the electricity and gas facilities is also part of my project, so I will write it in the inclusion. If it is not, then I will write in the exclusions or out scope, right? So in the define scope process, when we create a scope statement, the scope statement must, write explicitly all those things that are not part of the scope. This is very important, right? I'm not sure if you have received a sample project report of your PMO subject or not. I had shared this with so many semesters, and I guess I promised with you as well, but you people didn't remind me, so I didn't share. Just go through that report. It is about town planning, actually. If you would see, there I have written some exclusion in the scope statement, right? So sometimes it becomes important for you to write down explicitly to avoid any confusions between you and the customer or between any of the team members and you. Look, when team is working on the project site, they may not be all the time, consulting you regularly. So at that time, especially if let's say my project team is working in the customer's premises, right? Let's say a person from the a project team from the construction from a construction company or from a builder is constructing a building within premises of the Barrier University. And here, the rep of Barrier University, they may ask or they may, put some requirements during the project in front of this project team. So, this project team should be very clear that is that requirement that Barrier University staff is trying to include in the project is part of the scope statement or not. If it is clearly written that this is not part of the scope, that team would be able to take a quicker and better decision. Is it clear?
So it's clear.
Right,
Yes.
right. So our next process is defining the scope. In this process, we actually develop a scope statement, and that scope statement actually helps us or set as a basis of further planning in the project. Once we know our scope, and that means both the product scope and the project scope, right? And I hope it is clear to you what is a product scope and project scope. Can someone tell me who has already not obtained any mark today?
The product scope
Sir,
हमारे technical
project scope and
specification
project scope
Someone has
process
already
होता है.
started. Hamayu, wait. Someone has already started. Ji sir,
Sorry,
please go ahead.
sorry.
सर प्रोडक्ट स्टेटमेंट जो प्रोडक्ट स्कोप जो होता है वो हमारे सिर्फ टेक्निकल स्पेसिफिकेशन होती है जो एग्जैक्टली उसको मतलब
Very
वो
right,
करते
very
हैं
right.
और जो प्रोजेक्ट स्कोप है उसमें मतलब टेक्निकल के अलावा बाकी जो चीजें करने में हमें करना होगा प्रोडक्ट्स वो
तो
सारा
इसमें टेक्निकल भी शामिल होंगी या नहीं होंगी?
टेक्निकल प्लस नॉन टेक्निकल सर बोथ.
नॉन टेक्निकल. योर नेम प्लीज सर.
सर राशिद मुआविया.
Rashid Mavi, okay. Right, CR, please write down his name as well. Hamayu, I'm sorry. Okay. So, like in defining the scope process, we need to actually prepare. The main purpose is preparing a scope statement, but obviously there would be certain other things, certain other documents that would be updated. Assumption log, we talked about that enough about this, assumption log enough in the last semester. I hope you remember that. Then requirement documentation may be revised. While preparing the scope statement, the requirement documentation that we previously established, we might need to make certain changes into it, right? And then requirement traceability metrics would also be updated. Sometimes during the defining scope process, we may identify a new stakeholder, or we may find a specific stakeholder showing his expectations or her expectations. So our risk register would be obviously, sorry, stakeholder register would be updated accordingly. Anyways, these are, I don't consider them as that important as this document is, that is project scope statement. And this would be our focus of, coming slides. Now, preparation of the detailed project scope statement builds upon the major deliverables, assumptions, constraints. I'll talk about the assumption and constraint in a while, right? So, but major deliverables that you need to produce during, as a result of this project would be part of the of your scope statement, right? You also need to look about the major existing assumptions, risk, constraints. Now, can someone tell me in the last semester, I talk about 3 documents that are almost there as an input of every process. Can someone tell me what were those 3 documents?
So let me see. There's a business requirement,
No,
stakeholder requirement,
no,
solution
it was
requirement.
no,
that
sir. It was Hamayu, I'll come to
the
you now.
business case.
No, please,
Yes, sir.
please let me ask the question again. During last semester, I taught you that on the input of every process, there are 3 documents that we generally consult. And as a result of that process,
Sir,
again, these 3 documents would be updated.
सर मैं बताऊं
जी जी बताओ
सर मैं बताऊं
नहीं नहीं जब पहले पहले किसने कहा
तो मैंने
जी जी बोले
सर मैं बोलूं
जी सर
जी सर एक जो कॉस्ट प्लान होता है
नो नो मैम
नो
सर
who's next
प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट प्लान
no
प्रोजेक्ट
no no
The project charter
no
or
sir
E
no no
PS.
no no
ईएफ ओपीएस
EF तो OPS
No?
होते ही होते हैं
नो
डॉक्यूमेंट्स
बिजनेस
डॉक्यूमेंट्स
केस सर बिजनेस केस याद आ
नो
गया
ओके
बिजनेस केस
नहीं अच्छा चले मैं नहीं याद नहीं आया अभी आपको मैं याद दिलाता हूँ
Scope statement.
okay 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 let
Scope
me remind you no sir okay one is risk register you see
और
they
स्कोप
might
स्टेटमेंट
no wait one is risk register there might be certain risk that may affect your process assumption log in the assumption log, we have certain assumptions and constraints. So there might be some assumptions and constraints related to or that may affect our this process. And what was third? You can check your notes at least.
सर प्रोजेक्ट स्केड्यूल
तुक्के नहीं लगाने ना. There are 3 things that we consider every time we perform a process. Sorry,
Sir,
constraints.
first is the assumption log, lesson learned register, and risk
Well
register.
done, Mali. You have consulted your notes. Well done. So, Mali is correct. Lesson and register. There might be some lessons pertaining to this process, right? So, we will consult those while defining scope. And at the output, we might identify new risk during this process. So we will update the risk register. We may find new assumptions or some previous assumptions. We may find that they are no more valid. So we will update that assumption log. And similarly, a risk register a lesson and register because we may learn new lessons during this process so we might need to update those so now if you are unable to remember that I'm sorry I can't repeat it again and again but these are the 3 documents that we generally consult every time we perform a process right and at the output sometimes they are updated as well okay now here's one thing written that is whether a project uses a plan driven or change driven approach, we will still define the scope. However, the detail of that scope would depend whether we are using a plan driven or we are using a change driven approach. In case of plan driven approach, we try to write a detailed scope statement. However, in case of change driven we just define things at a higher level right we'll talk about this in a while maybe if time permitted otherwise we'll continue this thing in the coming lecture inshallah right so the output of this process is a scope statement right and in the scope statement we need to write the complete description of the scope the major deliverables the acceptance criteria and exclusions particularly, right? So what all is included in the scope? It's major deliverables and the acceptance criteria, right? So we need to include these 3 plus the 4th thing is out scope. Sometimes on projects where we don't maintain an assumption log with us, we try to add assumptions and constraints in the scope statement, right? Where we are not maintaining a separate assumption log. There, we will add assumptions and constraints in the project statement too. Is it clear?
No.
No? Okay. There are two ways. One, we maintain an assumption log. An assumption log contains two things, assumptions and constraints. Both are written in the assumption log. If you have an separate assumption log, you don't need to write these assumptions and constraints in the scope statement. But if you are not maintaining a separate assumption log, then you need to write assumption and constraint here as a part of the scope statement. Correct?
Okay, sir.
Right. So at the end, once you get a scope statement, it gives us a common understanding, a clear understanding among different stakeholders that this is what we have to do, right? This scope statement will tell everything that this is the work that we need to perform on the project. It includes both the product scope and the project scope. So as a result, it helps the team to perform more detailed planning. Like this scope statement would act as a starting point, as a reference point, and from this point on, we will start breaking down this work into WBS, then further breaking down the work packages into activities. Then those activities would be sequenced. We will, prepare, or we will estimate the duration of each activity to prepare the schedule. We'll estimate the cost of these activities to prepare the cost baseline. We will estimate the resource requirement for these activities and so on. So basically, it is the scope statement that would act, or that will tell all the stakeholders that this is the work that we need to do, right? Now remember, scope is also defined in the project charter, and scope is also defined in the project scope statement. However, there's a difference. In project charter, we give a high level scope. We don't go into detail, but in case of scope statement, we go into detail of that scope, and we prepare a detailed scope statement. Now let me give you the difference. For example, let's say we want to construct a house, and during house construction of a house, we will write a high level scope in the project charter. For example, we would say that it would be a two-story building with a Mamti and terrace at the top. It will have one, let's say, overhead water tank and one underground water tank, right? And it will include all the civil work and the electric work and the plumbing work and so on. But this will not include any, let's say, earthing arrangements, like this is a small house, so we don't need any earthing arrangements and so on. So at this, in the charter, we are only defining a high level scope. But in case of scope statement, now we will write all the details, like wood would be of this quality, right? And we will use this kind of tiles. We will use this kind of paints. So now these requirements would come here at this stage. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
So
sir.
so scope is there in both the project charter and the project scope statement, but since charter is created at the start of the project, right in the beginning, at that time we don't have detailed requirements. It is detailed planning, the upfront planning, when we have gathered all the requirements from the stakeholders, and then based on those requirements, we have created a detailed scope statement. Correct? So
Correct,
here
sir.
is here is a comparison between two. Like at project charter level, we just focus on the project purpose, measurable project objectives, high level requirements, right? High level project descriptions, overall project risk, the summary milestone. So everything is at high level. But in case of project scope, here we define the scope in more detail. we identify the deliverables that would be part of the scope. Then we check the acceptance criteria of various deliverables, and we also add project exclusion. There could be two more parts, assumptions and constraints, but again, since we are maintaining a separate assumption log which contains both the assumptions and constraints, so we are not writing them here in the project scope statement. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes,
now,
sir.
right, so this project scope statement would contain a product scope description. That means the details or characteristics of the product, stories, the wood and everything, it would be written here. Then the major deliverables, right? That would, you know, uh, the interim deliverables that we will get. Do you remember I shared uh, a project scope statement of a learning management system with you guys? OTS project, online teaching system project in the last semester,
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir.
We were part
right?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
last semester.
yeah. And it contained four major deliverables: the website, the online teaching platform, the learning management system, and training manuals. I hope you remember that. Okay, then
Yes, sir.
Sir, our
accept.
class believe.
Oh, okay, you were not, yeah, there. But okay, I'll share that document again. Please do remind me. So now a set of conditions required to be met before deliverables are accepted. So this is would be the call as acceptance criteria. Then project exclusion. That means things that are not part of the project, we need to,
The
you
outscope.
know, sorry,
The
outscope. Yeah,
outscope.
yeah, this is the outscope. And here we need to tell everyone clearly so that it will help us in managing stakeholder expectations. We don't want our stakeholders to expect something from this project which is not part of the project. So we need to actually make things clear right in the beginning. Otherwise, people will, may have or they may develop or keep some expectations from the project later on, which may result into their dissatisfaction, and that we don't want. We want the satisfaction of the stakeholders. Right. So now we have developed the scope statement. What next? Now time has come to break down this scope statement into smaller manageable chunks. And for that, we create a WBS. And again, you have studied this creation of WBS in enough detail in the first semester. Did you?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. So now, look, this process will give us two things. Creation of WBS will give us two things. One is WBS, and second is WBS dictionary, right? WBS and WBS dictionary. Combined together, when we combine three things together, one, the scope statement, second, WBS, and third, WBS dictionary. These three things combined together, the scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary, combined together, this thing is called as the scope baseline. Correct?
yes,
Your complete scope is placed in different details in these three things. Descriptive form would be a scope statement mostly. Its hierarchical structure and the breakdown would be there in the WBS, and the details of the WBS would be in the WBS dictionary. So these three things combined together contain all details of your scope, and that's why this is called as the scope baseline.
okay.
Correct? Okay. So now, in WBS creation, there were certain points that I need to revise, right? Uh, this topic was because we spent a good one lecture just on WBS creation in the last semester. So I'm not, this was part of your fundamentals, and this was part of your project cost management as well that I taught you guys. So in both of the subjects you studied this thing, but there are certain quick rules or there were certain important points that I will just quickly go through. One, can someone tell me what is 440 and 880 rules and 300 rules?
Yes,
minimum
sir.
Cycle
yeah,
of
sir.
The
So minimum
minimum,
activity can be 4 hours and maximum for the 40 in 440 rule और
uh,
880 में सर
नहीं किस में किस part of what?
सर 440 में जो हम एक्टिविटीज डिफाइन करते हैं उसका मिनिमम टाइम ड्यूरेशन 4 हो सकता है और मैक्सिमम 40 हो सकता है
अच्छा, WBS में please remember, when we create WBS, activities are not part of the WBS.
Yes.
So please, could
Activities are
you,
part of the program.
no, activities are not part of WBS, right? Please remember that.
Packages.
The lowest level of WBS is work packages,
Work
Package.
package.
work packages, right? So we
Yes,
break down, we break down the work, we break down the work to a level where we feel that, okay, this is good enough a level that could be easily estimated, managed, and controlled, right? If we have broken down a bigger piece of work into a smaller one to a level where now we feel that, okay, at this stage, estimation and planning would be easier for me. And, when we will manage, we will just appoint a work package manager for that who would look after this piece of work. And it would be easy for monitoring and controlling. So, planning, execution, and controlling, when it all becomes easy for you, you stop at that level, you stop further breaking down the work. And this level is called as work package level, right? If we try to further subdivide this level, actually, that makes our things more inefficient. You know, going or planning things at a very minute level will just add into your troubles. It will not make things better for you. Similarly, monitoring and controlling every smaller chunk, makes things more complicated for you. But it would be easy for you to manage it at a reasonably small level, but not to you know breaking down it to too small a level would actually decrease your efficiency. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is one thing. Second thing is, sometimes we don't have enough details of a piece of work and we don't create a work package for that. Rather, we create a planning package for that. And we leave this planning package for further clarification, maybe later during the project. So that is the concept of, I hope you remember, the progressive elaboration. And based on that,
Rolling
we
wave planning
and rolling
and
wave planning. And yeah, so based on that, we leave something at a planning package level. But once those details are obtained during the project later on, we actually break it down again to the work package level. Is it clear? I hope.
yes.
I mean, so now these rules that are written in front of you, they are journal guidelines. Like for smaller projects, a work package should be not the activities. One of you, sir, you were referring to activities. No, not activities. The work package should not be uh, like too small that to complete that work package you require a time lesser than 4 hours. It should be greater than 4 hours, but it should not be that big that you require more than 40 hours to complete that work package. That means this work package should be that small that you should be able to complete this work package within 4 hours to 40 hours. That means 4 hours means half day and 40 hours means 5 working days, right? So you should be able to finish this in a week. On medium sized projects, however, we say that 880 rule will be a general guideline for you. And in that, we say that work package should not be that small that it requires a work of less than 8 hours or one day. And it should not be that big that it requires more than 2 weeks or 80 hours. Is it clear?
So it's telling us the minimum and maximum values of time.
Maximum, yeah, exactly, sir. And for large projects, the general rule is a work package should be roughly around 300 hours. But again, these are rule of thumbs. These are not some hard and fast rules. Like if you say me that, sir, I've divided the work package to a level and it requires 3 hours, 30 minutes, will that be fine? Okay, if you think, yes, this is a reasonable size of work, and it is important for breaking down this work to this level, then it's fine. Similarly, if you are saying that my project is smaller, but it requires 48 hours, that means 6 days. So will that be fine? Okay, yes, that would be fine. But these are just general guidelines to help you to make a decision that, okay, I guess we have reached to a you know a smaller level that should be sufficient. I hope this is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then there was another rule that was 100% rule. Can someone tell me what is this? Gee,
The 100% rule is about that all the WBS activities should like all the working hours should work correspond to the whole cycle of the project.
uh, okay. And anybody else?
All the
Yes,
deliverables with all the
100% rules means we have just do what WBS said. We cannot do nothing more than this, but we cannot do nothing less than this.
Okay, fine. So generally speaking, we say that when we roll up the WBS elements, right?
Mhm.
Roll up. For example, if I combine these two elements and these two elements, these four elements combined together should deliver me this thing 100% complete. Nothing
Mhm.
less, nothing more, right? For example, if I say this is my work, let's say this is a piece of work and it is about doors, right? Let's say construction of or developing of doors. And here I've written two things. One, let's say the door itself and the frame or the chokathe for that, right? And now if I combine these two things, do you think the door is 100% created? No, we might have other things in it. Polish, where's polishing of the doors? So we need to be sure that nothing is missed. When we roll up these two activities, it should completely give me this thing. Nothing should be missed. But at the same time, we should also ensure that there should be nothing extra, right? So the work that is required and all the work that is required, this is called as the 100% rule. Correct?
Correct, sir. Correct.
Right. So then there are certain other points that is about the decomposition, right? Since we have already covered it, so I'm not going into the detail, but there's one point that I will actually emphasize on. Let's say, sorry, let's say if this is my project and these are the, I'm really sorry, drawing this thing with the mouse is really difficult. Okay, now this is, you know, my WBS kind of thing, right? Here I'm trying to divide or break down my work into smaller manageable chunks. Now, where should I stop? One rule that you just seen, like if it is a small project, 440 rule will tell me that, okay, this is enough a level where you can actually easily plan, manage, and control your work. So this is enough. There's another condition based on which we actually stop breaking down the work. And what is that condition? I've already told you, if someone would tell me this condition, I will give 2 marks to him or her. I'm saying,
the
let
planning
me,
package.
okay, okay, no, no, wait. Let me explain this. One, I'm breaking down the work and I will keep breaking down it to a level where I can easily plan, manage, or execute, or monitor and control that piece of work. So when this level is achieved, I stop breaking it down. Obviously, planning package is a bit higher than this. So I'm not talking about that we have already covered. There's another criteria based on which you may stop breaking down somewhere here or breaking down somewhere here.
Hmm.
What
Planning
is that?
package.
No, planning,
When
leave
all
that.
deliver-
40 rule for
No,
40 rule या और
no,
KTT
that
rule
is that तुक्के नहीं मारने. That is related to luck. ये
The
तो
work
वर्क पैकेज, ये तो वर्क पैकेज लेवल है ना, इसकी बात नहीं कर रहा मैं. I'm asking you, there was another condition based on which you stop breaking down the work further.
Sir, when all deliverables
Oh,
has
sir,
been
I
achieved.
remember you said that is a control account.
No,
Sir, when all deliverables as per scope has been achieved.
no, sir.
I know that concept, sir. Like you have to finish it in a level that management,
No, no,
level,
no,
they
no, no,
will
no, no,
check
no,
it.
no, 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 no. That is control account, but we break down it, right? That is not the concept. Okay, can you tell me? It is related to procurement, right? Have you studied the plan procurement process?
Not yet, sir.
I
Not
think
yet.
Okay, but I taught you one thing that let's say if this is the work that we don't have to perform ourselves,
we outsource them now.
we will outsource them, then
Course.
why would we break it down? If I don't have to do that thing myself, then why would I break it down?
To just
So
stop there.
you just stop there, right? So in case we do or we carry out a make or buy decision at this level, so out of this work, which work we will do ourselves, and that work would be broken down to a work per package level, obviously. And let's say if I don't have to perform this work myself, in that case I will just stop it here. And in addition, or here I will add a project management deliverable here, and here I will add procurement related items, that for this work I need to publish advertisement, I need to select the vendors, I need to go into contract with that. So everything that comes under procurement, I will plan various things about procurement here, but I will not break it down further. If you remember, I gave you an example, like if we are going for a trip and there were different, like on a trip there was a thing that was called as transportation, and in this transportation we decided that we will not bring our own cars, rather we will hire or we'll take a car from, or sorry, a bus from somewhere and on rent, and we will go on that bus on that trip. So in this case, I will not break down, check this work into checking your fuel, checking your, brakes or tires and everything here. I'll not break down this work because now I don't have to perform it. So rather, instead of this, I'm saying that, okay, I will outsource the transport. And for that, I will add certain activities here in the procurement part, that for this,
Implementation.
I will go the market survey and all that, right? Then it would be that driver or that transporter who would be checking all everything for me. Correct?
सर यस सर
जी मैम.
बिल्कुल ठीक सर बस एक बात पूछनी थी कि जो प्रोक्योरमेंट हम अब प्लान
Sir,
करें
I have a question.
एक मैम, एक को करना है.
हम लोग वर्क
एक मैम, एक मिनट, डॉक्टर साहब वो क्वेश्चन कर रही हैं अभी. ओके जी, डॉक्टर साहब प्लीज.
जी सर मैं ये पूछ रही थी कि जो प्रोक्योरमेंट फिर हम प्लान करते हैं उसकी टाइमलाइन हम उस प्रोक्योरमेंट में सेट करेंगे टाइमलाइन और जो हमारी
हाँ, अच्छा, अब मैं बताता हूँ, वो मैं आपको बताता हूँ. लुक, लेट्स से, चलिए ये आपके सामने एक है, लेट्स से मैंने ना एक मिनट में आपको कोई, ये देखें, यहाँ पे चीजें होंगी मेरे पास. लेट्स से ये वो चीज है जो मैंने प्रोक्योर करना है, राइट? या इनमें से कोई भी एक चीज मैंने ऐसे रैंडमली सर्कल कर दी है. सो प्लीज डोंट लुक एट द कंटेंट, लेकिन लेट्स से दिस इज द थिंग दैट आई नीड टू आउटसोर्स. अब इसके अगेंस्ट यहाँ पे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की जगह मैं कहता हूँ प्रोक्योरमेंट का काम है. So procurement के अंदर we just at this level, we at WBS, in WBS we will stop breaking down things at work package level only. Once we will enter into the next process, that is scheduling process. There we will define the activities. So activities are defined after the work package level, right? WBS would contain only the things up till work package level. Is it clear? But your theme is correct, ma'am. Dr. Saiba? आपका जो
जी जी
concept है, that is correct. That after that,
जी
obviously, we will plan all those. Like that would be part of activities, sequence
right
activities, right? Not it would not be part of the work package level.
right thank
Okay,
you
or the part of WSG, ma'am. There was another ma'am who was asking something.
हो गया sir, it's clear now.
Okay, fine. I'm sorry, oh, ma'am का question पहले था, right? अच्छा, so that was all about WBS, work packages, control accounts and everything, rolling wave planning, planning package, this all is clear. I've just added these slides in this lecture so that if you want to revise, you may, right? But this topic is covered, like I guess in your FOPM, you created a WBS, in the cost too, you created a WBS too, right? Okay, so all these slides have been just copy pasted from the same lecture. So I've just put it here for, so that you don't need to go to your previous semester's handouts. So you can read everything from this. So now WBS dictionary would contain the details of your WBS. Look, let me draw a manual kind of WBS dictionary for you, how it would look like. Let's say this is my WBS, right? And here it is 1.1, this is 1.2. I hope you already know that what is 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. And there are two parts, 1.1.1 and 1.1.2. And in the WBS dictionary, how would it appear? Let's say it's a folder, like in which I will have many pages. On the first page, I will have this part, the complete project and its description. Within that, I will have three deliverables. Let's say I put different separators in between. The first deliverable will contain this much part. The second deliverable, I'm just giving different colors to it. These are different separators, right? And then the third deliverable, let's say I make it white. So these are different deliverables. Now, within each deliverable, let's say within this 1.1, this is 1.1, I will have again two separators in which I will have 1.1 here and 1.1.2 here. This will just be a page. On that page, what I will write, 1.1.1, its parent deliverable is 1.1, let's say doors or woodwork. 1.1 is woodwork. 1.1.1 is doors. Description of the doors, who will prepare it, the details of activity and everything. These details would be added later. Once we'll identify the activity, we may write the schedule of those activities. How I will say, or the acceptance criteria for door can be written here. So this would be a complete page, and who would be managing this work. Let's say this is work package. So I will write work package manager, acceptance signatures and everything. So once the work on this work package would start, I will just take out this page. Let's say I will give it to that work package manager and I will say, please work on this. And once completed, bring it signed with me. And that person will complete that work in 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 days and bring that to me. And I will just insert it back here. Is it clear? So this WBS dictionary can be used as a very useful tool for, assigning responsibilities to people. It is just like in workshops, we have a job card. I hope some of you might have experienced this job card. Does anyone know about job cards or no?
Jigsaw dot.
या बिल्कुल सर, वो भी है। It is the
JIC
same
sir,
manner.
job
JSS, हाँ बिल्कुल
identification.
बिल्कुल वही बिल्कुल ऐसे ही सर, वो उसी का पर्सपेक्टिव वही है ये। But in workshops, we generally say it as, in factories, we call it as job cards, right? So in the morning, when people go, they assign them a page like these are your duties to do today. And once you're done, please bring it back after signatures and you put it back. So all your scope is contained within this folder at various levels, correct?
Hmm.
Right. So this could be an example of just a sample page, you may say, of WBS dictionary, project title, date prepared, work package name, WBS ID, description of the work that is part of this work package element, and then milestones. Now activities would be added later on, but initially it would just be description of the work package. What are the quality requirements associated with this, acceptance criteria, technical information, and you can add anything. And you can add also signatures, who would be responsible for this, and so on. Correct? So at the end of this process, you will get a scope baseline, and your scope baseline has got three parts. That is project scope statement, WBS, and the WBS dictionary. Combined together, this is called as scope baseline. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so now here is again, I just want to sum up everything in the scope
Sir, I have
planning
one
part.
question.
जी ma'am.
सर फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हम 440 रूल और 880 रूल तब लगाते हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हमारे पास कोई ऐसी एक्टिविटी या वर्क पैकेज है जिसमें हमारी रिक्वायरमेंट है कि हमने किसी सिग्नेटरी से साइन लेने हैं, लेकिन
हम्म
उनसे टाइम लेने में हमें टाइम ज़्यादा लग रहा है, फॉर एग्जांपल फॉर वो काम सिर्फ 2 मिनट का है लेकिन उस
हम्म
साइन के लिए हमें 4 दिन लग सकते हैं, तो वो
एग्जैक्टली मैम।
उस पे हम कौन सा रूल लगाते हैं?
हाँ देखिए, यही है, ये आपने टाइम एस्टिमेट तो उस काम का 7 days ही रखेंगे ना, अप्रूवल प्रोसेस, राइट? अच्छा, नाउ लुक, दिस इज जस्ट एन एक्टिविटी, बट लेट्स से इफ वर्क पैकेज हमारे इस लेवल पे है, these rules are just guidelines. Look, the main theme is you keep dividing the work, right? You keep subdividing the work into smaller pieces. Why? What is the purpose of doing this all? Why I break down the work? So that
इजीली
when
मैनेज
I
इट।
easily plan it and manage it and control it. If it is a big, like for example, if I ask you how much all of the woodwork take me, right? You cannot get a good idea. So I say, okay, let's break it down. How much doors would cost me? How would how much racks would cost me? How would much other woodwork would cost me? Now you have broken it down. It is easy for you to plan, to estimate, and then once work would start, it would be easy for you to manage it, and it would be easy for you to monitor and control the progress. Is it clear? So this is the purpose of breaking down the work. Now somebody you like may get confused that, okay, what is the appropriate level? Shall I divide it further? We say no. For guideline, for a you can take it as a tip. Okay, just a tip that, okay, if your project is small, you can divide it somewhere between 4 to 40 hours. Somewhere between, this work should be completed in 4 to 40 hours. That's it. And if it is a large project, this work should be between 8 to 80 hours. But the main theme is you should keep breaking down it to a level where you can easily plan it, manage it, and control it. So based on experience of previous, project managers, they have developed a general rule of thumb that if you, for smaller projects, I guess a work package should be between 4 to 40 hours. I guess this is good enough, right? So this is just a guideline. Is it clear?
Sir.
Okay. Acha, so here I was just trying to sum up things, and that is in the scope planning process, we actually created a scope management plan and the requirement management plan. Then we started the next process, that was collection of requirements. But how do I collect requirements? How do I document these requirements? And how do I keep a trace of it? This requirement management plan will guide me. All the instructions about collecting the requirements, documenting the requirements, what would be the format of my requirement traceability matrix, everything I will get from the requirements management plan. This will be the plan that will guide me how to carry out this process. So based on these guidelines that are written in the requirement management plan, I will carry out or I will collect the requirement, and I will prepare a requirement documentation, and I will prepare a requirement traceability matrix, right? And in the requirement traceability matrix, we covered like a lot of details. After that, once we gathered the requirement, we started defining the scope. But how we will define the scope? The guidelines that I will get about defining the scope will be written where? In the scope management plan. This scope management plan will guide me how to define the scope, how to create the WBS and everything. So, sorry. Uh, uh, so, based on the instructions given in my scope management plan, I will create the scope statement, and in the next process, I will subdivide or I will break down that scope into WBS. And again, the format of the WBS, the guidelines for the WBS would be written in the scope management plan. Is it clear? Like if you
Yes,
remember,
sir.
as in the cost management plan, we used to write how to estimate what would be the accuracy level of estimate, precision level of estimate, what currency to be used. So that cost management plan used to guide us during cost estimation, during preparation of budget. Similarly, the scope management plan and the requirement management plan will guide us how to collect requirements, how to define the scope, and how to create the WBS. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry, we'll take 5 more minutes and we'll just conclude it here then. Now here, project scope is can be found in various documents. In project charter, the scope would contain a high level description of the scope. In collect requirements, the requirement documentation and requirement traceability matrix will contain all the scope, right? But in requirements form. And then we'll shape those requirements in form of a scope statement. And then we will divide that scope into WBS, and then it will become a scope baseline, correct?
Yes, sir.
Acha.
Yes.
So now we are left with only one part that we'll study in the next class. And what is that? How, like, there are certain aspects that you need to consider during requirement gathering, during scope definition, and during breaking down of the scope in adaptive approaches. We have not considered the adaptive approaches in detail, like incremental, iterative, and the agile. But how to collect requirements in when requirements are changing, how to define the scope in adaptive approaches, how to break down the work in adaptive approaches, this will cover in the next class, right? So that part is only left, but one more point, please, just a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, but I need to just conclude this thing. I still have 2 minutes in my account, so I can use that. Do you remember this activity? Uh-oh. This one,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
So just try to relate whatever you have studied so
Sir, I
far.
can't see.
मैम maybe वो load हो रहा हो.
Sir,
It's
नजर
it,
आ रहा
नजर आ रहा है ना? Okay. So if you remember that blue color slide or the activity of various activities that you try to arrange in your classroom, like I gave you some cards or pages, and I asked you to arrange those processes, right? Now, look, the first thing that we did was to development approach and life cycle. Do you remember it? We are done with it.
Yes,
Correct?
sir.
Yes.
Okay. Then we said that we start preparing the plan for each knowledge area. The plan for scope knowledge area is covered, the scope management plan and the requirement management plan. I hope you remember.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Then we define and prioritize the requirements. We are done with it.
Yes.
Then we create scope statement. We are done with it.
Yes.
And at this time, we need to assess which part of the scope we will do ourselves and which part we will outsource.
The
Because
procurement.
this will trigger the procurement process. This will start the procurement planning. This is part of plan procurement process, right? So here, this will help us in, you know, creating WBS, because we'll be clear the things that we don't have to do ourselves. In that case, we'll stop breaking down work at that level. Fine. So
Yes.
we are done up till here. In the next, lecture, we will start creation of activity, the sequencing of activities in network diagram and everything. So I stop it here, but this part we have already covered in the planning, upfront planning. Okay, Ji, take it. I'll mark your attendance later, inshallah, so you may relax. Correct?
सर वो हमें एक मार्क्स
Thank you.
भी देना था.
आपको एक मार्क भी देना था और एक्स्ट्रा?
Yes, sir.
One
नहीं,
extra
ma'am.
mark from me, sir.
No, 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 no,
Yes,
no.
sir.
No, no, no.
एक.
नहीं, नहीं, नहीं.
Thank you.
वो
So
तो
then
पहले.
three.
Sorry?
Then three
मैंने कहा
extra
सर
will
आई
be
होप
with you.
नाम पे लिखे हैं नहीं